So, picture this. It is a bright, sunny Sunday morning in the summer of 1914. The vibe in the city is weird part celebration, part total tension. A fancy motorcade is rolling down the street, shiny and expensive, carrying a very important royal and a spouse. The plan is simple. Wave at the crowds, look powerful, and head to a reception at the town hall. It feels like just another day of politics and parades. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and today, everything is about to go wrong in the most ridiculous way possible. The day actually starts with a total mess. A group of young rebels is hiding in the crowd, waiting for the motorcade to pass. These rebels are not exactly professional mercenaries. Most are just angry students with zero experience. The first rebel loses nerve and does nothing. The second one actually throws a bomb, but it bounces off the convertible cover of the royal car and explodes under the vehicle behind it. Chaos erupts. People are screaming, the dust settles, and a few bystanders are hurt. The royal and the spouse are shaken, but alive. The motorcade speeds away, leaving the rebels scrambling. The assassination attempt is a flop. A total failure. At this point, the main rebel, the one who will eventually change history, thinks the mission is over. The chance is gone. The target has escaped. Feeling defeated and probably full of adrenaline and disappointment, the young rebel wanders away from the chaos. It is lunchtime, and even revolutionaries get hungry. The rebel stops at a small deli on a corner to grab a sandwich. Just a regular cheese sandwich. The plan now is probably to just eat, go home, and lay low. The destiny of the world is currently paused while someone chews on dry bread. Meanwhile, over at the town hall, the royal is furious. The speech is interrupted, the mood is ruined, and there is shouting about the security failure. However, instead of hiding or leaving the city immediately, the royal decides to do something brave, but incredibly risky. The decision is made to visit the hospital to check on the officers injured by the earlier bomb blast. It is a noble gesture, but it requires driving back through the same dangerous city streets. Here is where the accident part kicks in. The security team decides to change the route to avoid the crowds and the danger zones. But nobody tells the driver. Communication back then is not exactly instant. There are no radios, no GPS, just shouting and hand signals. So, the motorcade heads out, and the driver follows the original, pre-planned route instead of the new, safe one. The car turns onto a street that looks familiar. Suddenly, a general in the passenger seat realizes the mistake and yells at the driver to stop. The driver, likely panicked and confused, hits the brakes hard. The heavy vehicle comes to a screeching halt right in front of a corner shop. The gears grind as the driver tries to shift into reverse to back out of the wrong street. But the car stalls. It just dies right there on the pavement. And guess where the car stalls? Directly, and we mean strictly, in front of the deli where the defeated rebel is standing, finishing that sandwich. It is a 1 in a billion coincidence. The rebel looks up from the meal and sees the target, the exact person who was supposed to be dead hours ago, sitting in a stalled car less than 5 feet away. A sitting duck. There is no security detail blocking the view. No police. Just the royal, the spouse, and a struggling driver. The sandwich is dropped. The pistol comes out. 2 shots ring out. Bang, bang, that is it. No epic battle, no grand speech. Just a wrong turn and a lucky break for a killer. The royal and the spouse slump over. The car finally speeds off, but it is too late. The damage is done. Now, in a normal world, this would just be a tragedy. A double murder. The newspapers would run the headline, the police would arrest the bad guys, and life would move on. But this is 1914, and the world is a giant pile of dry dynamite waiting for a match. That sandwich was the match, because the royal belongs to a massive, Crumbling empire. The empire blames the neighboring country for the attack. The neighboring country asks for help from a big ally. The empire asks for help from another big ally. Suddenly, everyone is pulling out dusty treaties and old promises. It is like a bar fight where one person gets shoved. And suddenly, 40 people are throwing chairs because their cousin knows. The bouncer dot within 30 days, just 1 month after that sandwich was eaten. The entire continent is at war. This is not just a skirmish. This is the Great War. The war to end all wars. Let's trace the dominoes falling. Because it is honestly insane how far this goes. Domino 1. World War I. Because of those 2 shots. Millions of young people are sent to dig trenches in the mud. New technology like machine guns, tanks, and chemical gas turns the battlefield into a horror show. Empires that had lasted for centuries, the Ottomans, the Austro-Hungarians, the Russians collapse into dust. The map of the world is redrawn with a pen by people who have never visited the places they are dividing. But it does not stop there. The war creates a massive economic disaster. The losing side is forced to pay impossible amounts of money, leading to poverty, anger, and desperation. This creates the perfect environment for angry dictators to rise up, promising to restore glory and revenge. Domino 2. World War II. The unresolved issues from the First War lead directly to the Second. If the royal does not die, the First War might not happen, or at least not in the same way. Without the First War, the conditions for the Second War do not exist. But because of that wrong turn, the world plunges into darkness again, only a few decades later. This time, the destruction is even worse. The horror is industrialized. The atomic bomb is invented. The world is split in half. Domino 3. The Cold War. After the dust settles from the second global disaster, 2 massive superpowers emerge from the wreckage. They do not trust each other. They spend the next 50 years pointing nuclear weapons at each other, engaging in spy games, and fighting proxy wars in jungles and deserts thousands of miles away. The fear of total annihilation hangs over the planet for half a century. And think about the technology that comes from this conflict. The race to build better rockets for war leads to the space race. A human walks on the moon because 2 superpowers wanted to prove who was the boss. The need for decentralized communication in case of a nuclear attack leads to the creation of the internet. Yes, the network being used right now to read this story exists, in part, because a driver got lost in 1914, but it gets even weirder when thinking about the cultural shifts. The wars changed how society functions. The workforce changed. Aristocracies vanished. The very way people dress, speak, and interact evolved rapidly because the old world was blown to pieces. Now, look at the modern world. The borders in the Middle East, drawn up after the First War. The United Nations, created to stop a third one. The technology in a smartphone, descended from military research during the Cold War. Every single one of these things can be traced back through the chain of cause and effect to that one sunny afternoon in Sarajevo. Imagine if the driver had just checked the map. Imagine if the car had a better reverse gear. Imagine if the rebel had decided to eat at a different restaurant, or if the sandwich line had been longer. The car would have driven past. The royal would have gone to the hospital, visited the wounded, and gone home. The tensions in Europe might have cooled down. The diplomatic crisis might have been solved with a few boring meetings instead of millions of bullets. There is a terrifying beauty in the randomness of it all. It reminds everyone that history is not just made by great leaders and carefully planned strategies. Sometimes history is made by a flat tire, a wrong turn, or a rumbling stomach. The narrative often focuses on the great men theory, that powerful individuals shape the world through will and intellect. But this story proves the chaos theory. It proves that the world is fragile. A single thread snaps, and the whole tapestry unravels. Think about the rebel standing on that corner. That individual had given up. The pistol was probably in a pocket. The mind focused on the flavor of the cheese and the texture of the bread. There was no grand plan in that moment, only resignation. And then, fate literally drove the target right up to the curb. It is the kind of script writing that would get rejected by a movie studio for being too unrealistic. The audience won't buy it, they would say. It's too convenient. But reality does not care about being realistic. The aftermath of those 2 bullets is still being felt today. There are conflicts happening right now that have roots in the treaties signed after the First World War. There are families that do not exist because their ancestors perished in the trenches. There is art, literature, and music that was created in response to the trauma of that era. It is strange to think that the modern lifestyle, the connectivity, the geopolitics, the very boundaries of nations, is built on a foundation of total accidents. It makes one wonder what is happening right now, today. That seems insignificant, but will change the world in 100 years. Is there a driver taking a wrong turn somewhere? Is there someone grabbing a coffee who is about to bump into destiny? The story of the sandwich is a legend, a myth that has grown over time. Historians argue about whether it was actually a sandwich or just a coincidence of location. But the symbol remains powerful. It represents the tiny, mundane details that spark massive infernos. It represents the fact that control is an illusion